What if one of the quarters you ignore every day is actually worth real money? Sounds impossible, but some ordinary-looking Washington quarters have surprised collectors with values far beyond 25 cents. And the craziest part? Many of them still look completely normal. Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today we're uncovering the hidden world of rare and valuable Washington quarter coins that could still be hiding in circulation right now. In this video, we're featuring 3 quarters that collectors continue to watch closely. 1997 Washington Quarter, P. Philadelphia. 1983 Washington Quarter, P. Philadelphia. 1977 Washington Quarter, D. Denver. These classic quarters feature the iconic eagle reverse design and a durable copper-nickel clad composition used in millions of everyday coins across America. But hidden among ordinary, worn-out pocket change can be something far more valuable. Rare mint errors, unusual varieties, and hard-to-find high-grade examples that have turned some of these coins into collector favorites worth hundreds, sometimes even thousands, of dollars. Most people would never notice the difference. That's exactly why valuable coins keep slipping through everyday hands unnoticed. So before you spend your next quarter, take a closer look, because a tiny detail could make a huge difference. Now let's reveal coin number 1. Stop for a second and really look at the next quarter that passes through your hands. Because somewhere in America right now, a worn-out 1997 Washington quarter is sitting inside a dirty cup holder, hidden in a gas station cash register, or buried under old receipts in somebody's kitchen drawer, while people ignore it completely. Most Americans never look twice at quarters anymore. They spend them too fast, too casually, too automatically. But collectors know something different. They know certain coins become important not because they are gold, not because they are ancient, but because history quietly leaves fingerprints on ordinary money when nobody is paying attention. And the 1997 P. Washington Quarter is one of those coins. At first glance, nothing feels unusual. The familiar portrait of George Washington faces left exactly like millions of other quarters Americans carried for decades. Flip it over, and you see the classic eagle reverse design. Wings stretched wide, arrows below, olive branches underneath. A design that survived through generations of American history before disappearing forever just 2 years later when the state quarter era began in 1999. That matters more than most people realize. Because the 1997 quarter came from the final years of the original Washington quarter design era. One of the last chapters before American pocket change changed forever. And collectors pay attention to ending chapters, especially when those coins survive decades of circulation afterward. Now look near Washington's neck. That small P mint mark stands for Philadelphia, one of the oldest and most important mint facilities in United States history. In 1997, Philadelphia was producing enormous amounts of coinage to feed the growing American economy. Arcades, parking meters, fast food chains, vending machines, public transportation systems. Coins were moving through the country faster than ever before. And when mints begin operating at extremely high production speeds, strange things sometimes happen. Not giant movie-style mistakes. Tiny ones. Subtle ones. The kind only collectors notice. Weak strikes. Die fatigue. Minor doubling. Design softness. Microscopic variations hidden inside coins most people spend without a second thought. That is why serious collectors still search through 1997 P quarters even today. Because coin collecting is built on curiosity. The possibility that something small escaped into circulation unnoticed. Now imagine this. A heavily circulated 1997 P quarter. Darkened surfaces. Tiny scratches everywhere. Edges softened from years of use. Most people would throw it directly into a vending machine. But a collector slows down. They study the lettering. The sharpness of the eagle feathers, the condition of Washington's hair, the strength of the strike. Because sometimes the smallest details separate an ordinary coin from one collectors become obsessed with finding. And that obsession is what gives old coins their strange power over people. Not everyone understands it. To some people, it is just pocket change. To collectors, it is surviving history. Think about where this quarter has traveled since 1997. It survived the final years before the new millennium. It moved through restaurants, airports, stores, laundromats, and city streets while America itself was changing around it. And somehow, after all those years, some of these coins are still circulating today. That survival creates fascination. especially for collectors hunting cleaner examples with stronger detail and original luster still visible beneath decades of wear. Now here is where things become even more interesting. Many collectors consider the late 1990s Washington quarters historically important because they represent the closing moments of one of the longest-running designs in American coin history. For decades, Americans recognized that eagle reverse instantly. Then suddenly, it vanished, replaced by the state quarter designs that completely transformed coin collecting across the country. That transition created nostalgia, and nostalgia has enormous power inside the coin market. Collectors often become emotionally attached to coins connected to major historical changes in American currency. The 1997 P quarter sits directly inside that moment, one of the last traditional eagle reverse quarters before the old era disappeared forever. Now picture somebody finding one today inside an old jar of change, dust covering the surface, no shine left, completely ignored for years. Most people would never imagine that collectors still study coins like this carefully. But they do, because experienced collectors understand something beginners often miss. Value is not always about age alone. It is about condition, story, demand, survival, and historical timing. A coin does not need to be centuries old to become collectible. Sometimes it only needs to survive long enough for people to suddenly realize it represents the end of something important. That is exactly what happened with many late-era Washington quarters. And the 1997 P became part of that conversation quietly over time. Now listen carefully. The real excitement of coin collecting is not fake overnight billionaire stories. It is the hunt itself, the uncertainty, the possibility that an overlooked coin sitting in ordinary circulation still carries collector interest decades later. That feeling keeps people searching through rolls, drawers, boxes, and inherited collections every single day across America. And honestly, that excitement never completely disappears once someone starts paying attention to coins seriously. Because after a while, every coin begins feeling different. Every scratch tells a story. Every faded edge survived another year. Every worn surface passed through countless hands before arriving in yours. That is what makes the 1997 P Washington quarter interesting. Not because every example is secretly worth millions, but because millions of people ignored it while history quietly moved around it. And today, collectors still stop and examine these quarters carefully, hoping to find cleaner details, stronger strikes, or unusual characteristics hidden beneath years of circulation. So before you spend your next Washington quarter too quickly, pause for a second. Look closely at the date. Check for that small P mint mark. Study the eagle reverse. Because sometimes the coins people overlook the fastest become the ones collectors remember the longest. Stop. Do not spend another Washington quarter until you hear this. Because one of the most overlooked quarters in America right now is not silver, not gold, not ancient. It is the 1983 P Washington quarter from Philadelphia. A coin millions of people touched without ever realizing what made that year different. And tonight, you're going to understand why collectors still search for this quarter more than 40 years later. At first glance, it looks ordinary. The same George Washington portrait Americans had already seen for decades. The same eagle reverse design stretching across the back of the coin. The same copper-nickel clad surface worn down by years inside pockets. Vending machines, grocery store trays, parking meters, laundromats, and gas stations across the United States. Nothing about it screams rare. Nothing about it warns you to stop and look closer. And maybe that is exactly why so many survived unnoticed for so long. But the story behind the 1983 P quarter is very different from what most people think. Because 1983 became one of the strangest years in modern American coin collecting. And collectors never forgot it. Here's why. In the early 1980s, the United States Mint was facing serious economic pressure. America itself was changing. Inflation had shaken the economy. Production costs were climbing. Coin demand remained massive across the country. And during this period, something unusual happened. The Mint drastically reduced the production and sale of official uncirculated collector sets in certain years, including 1983. That decision changed everything. Because unlike many earlier Washington quarters that were carefully preserved in mint sets by collectors from the moment they were released, huge numbers of 1,983 quarters entered circulation immediately. They were spent, used, damaged, dropped, scratched, worn down by everyday life before collectors fully realized how difficult high-quality examples would become later. That created a strange situation. Millions of 1983 quarters existed, but far fewer survived in beautiful condition compared to many surrounding years. And collectors noticed, especially when they started searching for sharp examples decades later and discovered how difficult they actually were to find. Now look closely at the coin itself. That small P mint mark near Washington's neck stands for Philadelphia, one of the most historic mint facilities in American history. During 1983, Philadelphia struck enormous numbers of quarters to keep American commerce moving. But when production reaches extreme speed, quality sometimes suffers. Certain 1983 P quarters show weaker strikes, soft details, less defined hairlines around Washington's portrait, flattened eagle feather details on the reverse, and heavily circulated examples often look rough today because they spent decades moving constantly through the economy. That worn appearance tells its own story. This was not a coin protected inside velvet cases for generations. This was a working coin, a survivor of everyday American life. And strangely enough, that is exactly what makes collectors fascinated by it now. Because finding a clean 1983 P quarter today is much harder than many people expect, especially examples with stronger luster, sharper details, and fewer marks. That challenge keeps collectors searching through old rolls and forgotten jars even now. And once people start searching for a specific coin seriously, attention grows fast. Now imagine somebody finding a bright 1983 P quarter hidden inside an old bank roll. Almost no scratches. Sharp eagle feathers. Strong shine still visible across the surface. To most people, it still looks like 25 cents. But to collectors, condition changes everything. That is why grading became so important in modern coin collecting. Tiny differences separate ordinary circulated coins from examples collectors aggressively compete to own. And the 1983 P Washington quarter became one of those dates where quality matters enormously. Now here is the part that makes this coin even more interesting. The classic eagle reverse seen on this quarter was approaching the end of its long American journey. For decades, this exact design symbolized the Washington quarter. Then eventually the state quarter era arrived and changed American coin collecting forever. That means coins like the 1983 P quietly became part of the older traditional era collectors now look back on with nostalgia. And nostalgia is powerful, especially in coin collecting, because coins are more than metal. They become frozen pieces of time, little surviving objects connected to older versions of America, older stores, older cities, older generations. That emotional connection is part of what keeps collectors interested year after year. And the 1983 P Washington quarter carries that feeling strongly. A coin ignored by millions, yet remembered by collectors because of survival, condition scarcity, and its connection to a disappearing era of American currency. So the next time you see a worn Washington quarter sitting in your pocket change, stop for a second. Look at the date carefully. 1983. Check for that small P mint mark. Because sometimes the coins people dismiss the fastest become the exact coins collectors spend decades trying to find again. Stop before you spend another Washington quarter. Look at the date. Because one forgotten coin from 1977 is still quietly moving through America today, while most people never even notice it. The 1977 D Washington quarter. Denver Mint. An ordinary-looking coin hiding inside one of the loudest decades in American history. And the strange part is, the dirtier this coin looks, the more believable its story becomes. Because these quarters were everywhere. Inside arcade machines, inside old gas station registers, bowling alleys, movie theaters, truck stops, pocket change, fast food trays. For decades, Americans handled these quarters thousands of times without stopping to think about where they came from or what they survived. But collectors think differently. Collectors understand something most people miss completely. Sometimes coins become important not because they were born rare, but because time slowly erased them one by one until clean survivors became difficult to find. And that is exactly what happened to many 1977 D quarters. Now look closely near George Washington's neck. That tiny D mint mark stands for Denver, one of the busiest coin production facilities in the United States. During the late 1970s, America's economy was changing rapidly. Inflation was affecting everyday life. Coin production remained extremely high because the country needed huge amounts of circulating currency to keep businesses moving. And when mints start running presses hard day after day, small imperfections begin slipping through. Weak strikes, die fatigue, flattened details, tiny surface variations, the kind of things most people never notice. But collectors spend years studying carefully. That is why the 1977 D quarter still attracts attention today, especially heavily circulated examples that somehow survive decades of constant use. Think about that for a second. This coin could have passed through thousands of hands before reaching yours. Somebody may have used it to buy gasoline during the late 1970s. Another person may have dropped it into a jukebox during the 1980s. Maybe it sat forgotten in a kitchen drawer for 20 years before returning into circulation again. Every scratch on the surface carries part of that invisible history. And collectors love coins with stories hidden inside them. Now turn the quarter over. The eagle reverse design stretches across the back exactly like older classic Washington quarters Americans grew up recognizing instantly. Wings spread wide, arrows below, olive branches underneath. A design connected to generations of American life before eventually disappearing forever when newer quarter designs arrived decades later. That matters more than people realize. Because once old designs vanish, nostalgia begins growing quietly. Collectors suddenly start looking backward, searching for survivors from earlier eras. And the 1977 D quarter became part of that older world collectors still chase today. Now here is where things become interesting. Most 1977 D quarters you find today are heavily worn. The shine is gone. The details are soft. Washington's hairlines often appear flattened after decades of circulation. But occasionally, a stronger example appears. Sharper eagle feathers, cleaner surfaces, better strike quality. And suddenly collectors pay attention fast. Because condition changes everything in modern coin collecting. Two coins with the same date can have completely different collector interests depending on preservation. That is why people still search old bank rolls and change jars hoping to spot cleaner 1977 D quarters hiding unnoticed among ordinary circulation coins. And honestly, that search itself becomes addictive. Because every coin creates another possibility, another mystery, another chance to discover something overlooked for years. That feeling keeps collectors checking pocket change even after decades. Now imagine somebody finding a bright 1977 D quarter today inside an old family coin jar. No one looked at it seriously for years. It sat there silently while the world changed around it. And suddenly one person notices the stronger detail, the cleaner surfaces, the sharper strike. That moment is what coin collecting is really about. Not fake overnight billionaire fantasies. Not impossible promises, but the excitement of discovering that an ordinary object survived longer and better than most people ever expected. And the 1977 D Washington quarter carries exactly that kind of fascination. A coin born during a loud decade of American history, still surviving quietly today, while millions continue spending them without ever looking twice. So tonight, before you toss another quarter onto a counter or into a vending machine, pause for 1 second. Check the date, 1977. Look for that small D mint mark, because sometimes history hides inside the coins people ignore the fastest.